All right, welcome everyone. It's 6 p.m. on April 18th, 2023. This regular meeting of the Anne Arundel County Administrative Charging Committee will come to order. My name is Andrew Miller. I'm the committee chair. We'll now do a roll call to establish that we have a quorum, which consists of at least 3 of 5 members being present. Members will state present after their name is called. Ms. Charlotte Bundy, Ms. Sarah Cavett,
I'm present.
Ms. Lisa Sneed,
Present.
Mr. Kurt Zurcher.
Present.
All right, 4 of the 5 members are present, so we have a quorum. Next up is approving the agenda. Hold on one second. Just dialing back here a second to the roll call. Charlotte, just to catch you up, we were just doing the roll call here. I'll go ahead and say your name and then you can say present if you are still there. So Ms. Charlotte Bundy.
Present.
Okay, great. So we have 5 of 5 members present tonight. So first up is approval of the agenda, which has been distributed to committee members in advance of the meeting. There's going to be one modification. We will not be voting on the bylaws tonight. We have the approved version. We received it just recently. So what's going to happen next is we'll go ahead and distribute that to members, and then we'll give them time to review it, and then we can vote on it in the upcoming meeting. So do members have any objections to approving the agenda as amended with that one minor amendment? Okay, without objection, the agenda is approved as amended. Next up is the approval of the minutes. So the minutes from our March 21st meeting have been distributed to members. Are there any corrections to those minutes? If there are no corrections, then the minutes are approved as distributed. Moving right along here is public comment. We now welcome members of the public to make comments to the committee. Each speaker has up to 2 minutes. When making a comment, we encourage you not to refer to other members of the public by name in order to protect their privacy. And please be mindful that by law, the committee must maintain the confidentiality of case information, so we will not discuss particular cases in a public forum. With that said, we look forward to hearing your views. So to my understanding that we have one attendee registered to speak, and that's Ms. Jennifer Sell. So the floor is yours.
Hold on, Andrew. I don't know that she wants to speak, but we have one person in attendance.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, got you. Well, I should say that if she does want to speak, or if anybody else in attendance does want to speak, they're welcome to do so now. So we want to make sure they have ample opportunity to volunteer to speak if they would like to. And I see she has a hand raised according to here. So Jen, is there anything I need to do to give her access to speak? All right, great. So Ms. Sell, the floor is yours for 2 minutes. Thank you for coming to speak to us.
Sure. Hi, my name is Jennifer Sell, and I live in Severna Park. I will be honest, this is my first ACC meeting that I've been at, so I didn't actually know that you guys accepted testimony, so that's good to know. But I am a member of a few different racial justice groups in Anne Arundel County, and a member of the Anne Arundel County Coalition for Police Accountability. And so I personally, along with others in the community, are really looking to see, the type of work that the ACC is going to do and how you guys are going to be going about doing that. I think the last Police Accountability Board meeting was really promising because we saw that this new organization, these new institutions are going to hold the police accountable, and you guys play a really large role in that. I think it's really unfortunate that the Pittman administration did come to an agreement with the Anne Arundel County Police Department that many of the cases are not going to come before you because, there was an agreement that anything that came to any complaints that occurred prior to the ACC being stood up won't be sent to the ACC. So I think that's really unfortunate, and it kind of sets you guys off to an unfortunate start, but really looking forward to it. Definitely, hopefully we'll get more members of the community to start attending the meetings because transparency is really important. And there, we will be keeping an eye to see how the work of the ACC progresses moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And I think we can all say in 100% agreement that, transparency is crucial, and we intend to be as transparent as possible moving forward. So thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else in attendance who would like to speak?
There are no other attendees outside from the panelists.
Okay, great. So just a reminder to Jennifer or anybody else who eventually watches this, we're going to have, for all our regular meetings, we're going to have public comment. So you're welcome to speak directly to us. You can also submit written comments if you'd like. And the address for doing that is on the agenda. And I can also just state it here. It's acc-comments@aacounty.org. So that's acc-comments@aacounty.org, and we welcome comments from any member of the public. Okay, so with that, I declare the public comments portion of this meeting closed. Now, usually at this stage, we would have a update from the executive director, but as many know, we're kind of in a transition here where our previous executive director is phasing out, and happy to say our new executive director is phasing in here, Moya Panda, who's with us tonight. Ms. Panda will be taking over, and we're very much looking forward to work with her. And at these regular meetings, she'll be providing an update for us on a regular basis. Of course, she's just starting now in training and whatnot, so we'll probably hold off on that until next month. But we're definitely, like I said, looking forward to working with her, and looking forward to her engagement with the ACC and engagement with the community more broadly. Okay, so now we'll turn it over to the Office of Law, who will be doing a conflict of interest briefing for us. It's crucial that no members of the ACC review cases in which they have a conflict of interest. So this briefing, I think, is going to be very helpful for us to identify as members when we may have a conflict of interest, and then take the appropriate steps to address that. So I will go ahead and turn the floor over to, I believe it's Ethan. Will you be giving the briefing? All right. So thank you very much.
Sure. So the chair asked me to just talk briefly about the conflict of interest provisions that govern the administrative charging committee. And the conflict of interest provisions that are relevant are in COMAR, and it is in Title 12, Subtitle 4, Chapter 9, which sets the regulations for the Police Accountability Board and charging committees. And the definition of conflict of interest is a real or seeming incompatibility between an individual's private interests and the individual's official responsibilities in a position of trust. So that's the definition the commission came up with. They don't have a lot. They don't have any supporting documentation beyond what is in the COMAR regulations. I did reach out to them and spoke with their attorney. But there are also provisions in Part 7 regarding deliberations and determinations of the charging committee, and how a conflict of interest may play into that. So just briefly, charging committee members are required to abstain from any participation in a matter. So review, deliberation, voting, and a determination on whether or not to impose administrative charges if the member has a specific conflict of interest relating to either the police officer under investigation or the complainant. It's not entirely clear what a specific conflict of interest means, but my advice would be that if a member knows the complainant or the officer, they should recuse themselves from the matter. If they have information regarding the incident that is not available to the general public, they should probably recuse themselves. When this system was being developed prior to the legislation and the work groups that met a couple of years ago, the charging committee was envisioned, and it was described in a couple work sessions as being analogous to a grand jury. So, for that purpose, if you're, impaneled on a grand jury, you're supposed to be completely neutral, not have any context of a matter beyond what, is generally available to the public. So, if an ACC member has a potential conflict of interest, they shall announce that potential conflict of interest prior to receiving any materials contained in the investigative file or deliberating on the complaint. If a member becomes aware of a conflict of interest after receiving the investigative file, or starting to deliberate, potential to the other members of the charging committee. And remember, deliberations will be done in a closed session. So that announcement of a conflict would be in a closed session. Members shall discuss the details. I'm sorry. So if a potential conflict is announced after deliberations have started or after the files have been received, ACC members shall discuss the details of the potential conflict. And if a majority of the ACC determines that the conflict is such that the affected member should not be involved, members shall be excused from the meeting prior to any further consideration of the matter, and shall only return after voting on the matter has been concluded. And obviously, if a member feels that there is a conflict, and even if the majority of the charging committee determines that there's not a conflict and that member can continue to be involved, if that member feels that there is a conflict of interest and they should not participate, then they should absolutely recuse themselves. So that's my general overview of it. Obviously, this is a new system for everyone. I'm not aware of any cases yet that have been heard that other jurisdictions where the conflict of interest has been an issue. So I'm happy to take any questions and try to answer them the best I can, or if not, find out the answers for you all.
I'll just throw a question out there. So there's pretty obvious cases, right? If somebody's, the party to a complaint is like a relative or something like that.
Right.
That's obvious, right? Close friend, that's obvious. But what about edge cases or kind of gray areas where you have, let's say, like a colleague or something who works at the same place that you happen to work? That, I guess my sense is just, it's better to be safe and just recuse in that situation. But to what degree of social proximity is considered a conflict of interest based on how these have been handled obviously it couldn't have been in the ACC because this is new, but in similar types of institutions and committees. Is there any kind of guidance on that?
I'm not sure. I can look into it and find out more. I don't know if Tom or maybe Sarah might have thoughts just from, involvement in, I know Tom has been involved in criminal cases before, but also with trial boards. Officers that sit on trial boards under LEOBR, I think they had to be neutral, correct, Tom?
Right. There's a lot of gaps in the law. I just came from the training, and that's a term that comes up a lot. unclarity in the law, but here it's kind of up to the board as a majority as to whether the individual, when a juror is picked and they have something, a flag, so to speak, the judge will ask them, can you be fair and impartial? This is a question you hear in jury selection a lot. And I think that kind of fits here too. Can you, okay, obviously we have an attorney on our board as a member. So if the attorney had represented the police officer or the complainant and had learned specific private information about that individual, that's obvious, right? That's an obvious conflict that's done. But if it were something like, I'm from church, but very tangentially, not very directly, or them from kids' sports and they're on the same sideline, but you don't ever talk to them. Those are the kind of cases perhaps that are more tenuous. And you could say, well, I have seen that person before, but I feel like I could be fair and impartial. But the way that the law is written, it's set up such that the five or the people present, the majority would decide whether or not they think that the individual should be excluded or not. So I think it is written out very fairly. It makes sense the way that it's written out for those kind of questionable cases, for everyone to talk about it as a group and to come to a group decision.
Lisa, did you have a question or comment?
I think it's more or less a comment than a question. When I did the training in Western Maryland, I guess it was last month. Yeah, last month. Time is flying by. But I did the training with smaller counties. I can't even remember the population of Allegheny and what's the other one? Oh gosh. Anyway, the counties were so small. One of the things we talked about when we talked about conflict was like in the school system and the police departments, everybody knows everybody. It's almost impossible to sit on a trial board, not a trial board, but on the ACC and not know somebody who potentially could be charged. I bring that up only in the sense that, obviously Anne Arundel County is a lot larger than those counties out on in the western portion of Maryland. But I like Tom's comment about, the tenuous relationships that, but perhaps can happen here and there. And I think the language that's in the regulation is very helpful in that, as a committee, we talk about it. And having the opportunity to talk about it, we get past whether or not we think somebody should recuse themselves or not, because potentially, for example, Sarah and I both work in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and we know a lot of the same people. It's very possible that, both of us could end up, conflicted out because of, some of the same people that we might know. But just because I know them doesn't mean that I know them or that I have a relationship enough that, I think that we should, have to worry about a conflict, a true, what I might consider a true conflict, beyond being a relative or, a family friend or something, in that neighborhood. Just my thoughts.
Thanks for that. Yeah, Allegheny County's 67,000, population 67,000, so pretty small. So that's probably, yeah, it's even harder for them, I imagine. So okay, so I just think the way to approach this is that if we have any question about a potential conflict, like whatsoever, we just report it and we work through it. And I think we can come to like reasonable conclusions about how to deal with it. I would just emphasize the onus is on us to self-report this, and that's what's going to make that system successful is us coming forward and self-reporting if there's any question in our minds about it. So, are there any other comments or questions? Good. Let's go ahead and move on to unfinished business. So first item there is the transfer of the investigative files. Thus far, we've met with the sheriff's office as well as Anne Arundel County PD. And this process it's a little bit complex. It's not as simple as just picking up a file of folders and just dropping them off. Because of issues surrounding confidentiality, security, tons of information gets produced with most cases because of body camera footage, et cetera, right? So we haven't definitively determined what we will do.
Excuse me, could you define who is we, the we you're talking about?
Like as a committee, we have not definitively come to any determinations on what we will do.
No, you started out with saying we met, and I didn't know.
Oh, sorry. So yes, I met with AA County PD along with Moya, along with Jen, and then myself and Kurt met with the sheriff's office along with I believe it was Jansen and Jen as well. So before we come to any,
And how were those
clear.
people chosen to make these meetings? Because I don't recall anyone inviting me to any of those meetings. And why
Sure.
not?
Sure. So in order for us to, more than two of us to meet, we would have a quorum, right?
Right,
And that
but how
would
did you
come-
make the decision about who it should be?
What do you mean?
Why did you choose one person over the other? Did you have a lottery or did you decide? I mean, what's our?
Sure. So Kurt is the vice chair, right? So in the absence of the chair, Kurt would fill in. So it is useful for Kurt to have awareness and be engaged in those conversations.
Did you not say there were other people that you invited also, other than Kurt? Did you
Sure.
s-
So the other people are the committee staff, right? So that wasn't me personally inviting them, right? So they're going to be coordinating the transfer of the files between these agencies and the committee. So they absolutely need to be there.
So Kurt and Jen are going to be doing that? I
No,
just
so
want to be clear about who you're talking about.
yeah, so the committee staff will be coordinating. So they're going to be working with,
Staff meaning Jen and Kurt. I mean,
No,
could you use
no.
names and so it's clear?
okay, so
who you're talking about?
the committee staff are Moya, who is the executive director, as well as Jen, who's the administrative secretary, right? So they together comprise the committee staff. Myself, you, Lisa, Sarah, and Kurt are the members of the committee, right? So when three members are together, that constitutes a quorum, and therefore that would be a public meeting, right?
I
so-
understand that. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, so can you clarify the question?
No, you've answered it.
Okay.
Thank you. I said thank you for the clarification.
Gotcha. Okay. So crucially, and just to be clear, these are preliminary meetings, more informational than making decisions about what exactly will happen, right? But initially, we need to know what platforms they use, what capabilities they have, et cetera, so that we can come together and codify a process for making this transfer of the files, right? So based on that meeting, these are some of the principles that came from it, right? And again, this is all subject to change. And eventually we're going to have them come, and they, at least some of the agencies will come, they'll effectively train us, they'll show us their platforms, et cetera, so that we have a clear understanding of how to do it. But in terms of general principles that came from it, was one, the files will be transferred digitally, right? So they use, at least AA County PD uses what's called evidence.com. And that's where they store their body cam footage and other evidence and that sort of thing. The sheriff's office tends to use Google Drive, right? Which is, most of us are familiar with. It's just a basic cloud-based file sharing application where you can upload PDFs and that sort of thing. So it sounds like they use mostly Google Drive, but they also use evidence.com for videos and that sort of thing. So Principle one is that the transfers will likely be digital. Okay. Number two is that they will be providing all relevant information related to the case. Okay, so they will provide all relevant information to the case. So what that might mean is that we receive 10 hours of body cam footage, something like that, right? Which obviously could be fairly cumbersome, right? But they've agreed to identify, say, the timestamps in that body cam footage for the particular aspects that are important, such as the evidence that they cite in their report, right? So they're going to provide all the evidence, but they're going to cite specific parts of the evidence that relate to the report. So we're not, say, searching through 10 hours to try to find something, but we still have all the evidence on hand, okay? So that's principle number two. Principle number three is that when we make requests for additional information, they're going to have to be in writing, as they should be, so there's clear documentation that we've made what information that we've requested. And then finally, principle number four is that we're going to maintain the confidentiality. We're going to take whatever steps are necessary to ensure that these case files remain confidential, not only because it's the right thing to do, but it's also mandated by law, right? So those are kind of like the broad parameters that emerge from those meetings. I just want to open up the floor here if folks have questions, comments, other principles that you think we should really drive toward, that sort of thing. And Kurt, if you had anything else to add from the sheriff's meeting, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So one thing that I kind of got hung up on this when we met with them, file transfer as opposed to access to files. This is not something that they would necessarily send to our laptop but we would access their databases with read-only privileges. I just want to make that clear because transfer can be kind of tricky.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So the law says that they have to, quote, transfer the files, but what we would consider the equivalent of a transfer is in effect exactly what you just said, right? So they'll give us access to their files that are stored locally. We wouldn't be downloading these files on our laptop or anything like that. Yeah, we would just have access, and then once the case is over, once we review the case, then we would no longer have access, which is good, right? Because that's how we want to make sure the information's clearly controlled and contained, I guess, if you will. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, Sarah, please.
So I'm okay with all of this.
You're
My
on
only
mute.
question. Oh. Am I off mute now? Okay. I'm okay with all of that. My only question is if we get into the beginning and something doesn't work, can we revisit? Like if we find something that's a little broken, can we revisit something? Okay.
Absolutely. I think
Okay.
that's how this is going to go, right? Like it's going to be a little bit of trial and error, but yeah, no, without a doubt.
Okay, I'm fine.
So this is I think this process, one thing that I've talked to Jen and to a lesser extent Moya about is like building some sort of operations manual, which like clearly outlines like how this process will go. And by no means is that going to be like a static document, right? We're going to lay out this kind of initial approach, and then we're just going to fill it in and adjust it as it goes, as we realize, what works, what doesn't work. Another kind of goal that I think would be useful is if we try to get all the agencies on the same page, right? So I would, as much as possible, I think how Annapolis PD handles it and how Anne Arundel County PD handle it should be similar. That might not be possible to do at this like early stage, just because they may have access to different platforms, that sort of thing, which would make that tough. But hopefully, I think that's where eventually we want to get to and as soon as possible. So that would require adjustments to the process. All right, good. Next up is the review of the revised letter template and case report. So there were not major changes to those. I think Jen put them formatted and put them in a really nice, readable, good, useful format. So that was the main change. There's maybe minor changes around the edges. But again, just want to give anybody the opportunity to provide comments if they want. And we don't have to do it here. You can also just email us if something comes to mind. But we want to keep everybody involved in the process as much as possible. Anytime we edit something or whatnot. When I say we, talking about myself or the committee staff. Okay, just like I said, feel free to email if anybody has input on those documents. Meeting start times is next up. So we have two basic types of meetings here, right? We have this regular meeting, which is what we've been doing since we've had that training, and then we have special meetings, which could be called in the event that there is some sort of urgent review required for a case in order to stay within 30-day window or something like that, right? So when we're talking about start times, I think we should probably split it up between thinking about the regular meeting start times and then the special meeting start times. But does anybody have, maybe the best way to do this is we'll just continue this as kind of the default 6 p.m. on Tuesdays, the third Tuesday as the default, but would anybody like to change that for any reasons for these regular meetings?
Can I just ask for clarification? When you say regular meetings, are you meaning meetings where you would deliberate, or are these strictly just business meetings?
So I think there would be meetings where we would also deliberate, right? I think more and more we would want to deliberate during those regular meetings. But a regular meeting would have to happen at least once a month in order to stay in compliance with the law. Sarah, please.
I thought we already voted that we would meet the third Tuesday at 6 p.m. So I'm not clear why there's a change
Sure. So
proposed.
last meeting, it was brought up, I believe, by the previous executive director. It was mentioned that you should consider a different time. So we're just opening up the floor if anybody wants to potentially propose a different time than what we have now. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think if a case is going to be presented to us and we're going to be deliberating on that case, I think we have to meet earlier. I think if we start at 6, we're going to be here till 9, 10, however long the case is. So I think we have to consider if it's not a regular business meeting, maybe getting started at 5. That's my proposal. If we're deliberating on a case, maybe starting as early as 5, if everybody can do that. And I don't even know if it, depending on the frequency of the cases, and as I sat with the PAB, I heard of several cases coming our way. And so in the beginning, it could literally be rapid fire of a couple of cases, and then we might not be able to meet the third Tuesday. We may have to meet once a week for several weeks consecutively if these cases roll out. So I think we have to prepare ourselves to meet maybe a Tuesday, Wednesday, a Monday, Wednesday. So I think this, we may have to prepare for more than every third Tuesday or whatever this plan is. So I'm proposing that if it's a case, as early as 5 o'clock, so we're done by 9 or maybe earlier, I'd like to go to bed at a reasonable hour.
So I would agree. Definitely when we're reviewing, 6 p.m. might get kind of late, and time would creep up on us pretty fast. So I would agree with that notion that we might want to start earlier. I don't know, does it make sense just to move up our regular meetings to 5 PM? So just to keep it simple, or do we want to be flexible and move it up only if there's a case? We'll see. Charlotte, I see your hand up. Charlotte, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought you said Glenn. How does that work if we want to make the part of the meeting public? People don't usually get off at 5 o'clock to get to a meeting. I just wonder how we can accommodate our need to have extra time and also make the meeting accessible to the public at a reasonable time.
I think that's a fair trade-off to consider. I agree. Okay, well, why don't we just say tentatively for now, and feel free to object if anyone feels strongly about it, but why don't we say tentatively for now, we keep our regular meetings at 6 PM. And then if we do a special meeting, or if we find that 6 PM is just too late because we're going to be reviewing cases during those meetings, then we move them up. That might be just the way to do it for now, just keep it at the default. But of course, we can always reconsider it at a later date. Does anybody have objections to that? Okay, we'll leave it at that then. And then finally, like I said, we're originally planning to vote on the bylaws, but they've been reviewed, they've been approved by the Office of Law. We'll get those distributed to everybody, so then they'll have plenty of time to review them themselves, and then we'll vote on them. We'll hold a vote on them in the next meeting. New business. Do any committee members have new business, that is questions, comments, or concerns that they would like to bring to the floor for discussion? All right, does anybody have any announcements that they want to make? Any PAB related announcements, perhaps, Jen?
The next PAV meeting is Monday at Mountain Road Library at 6:30 PM. And then your guys' next meeting is Tuesday, May 16th.
Yeah. Okay. And this is part of the listening tour, that upcoming PAB meeting, or?
That is correct. It is in person only. It will not have any hybrid virtual option.
All right. Well, we encourage everybody to go out, especially if you're nearby, and engage with the PAB. Any other announcements? Yes.
Andrew, if I may, I just wanted to welcome and to introduce myself. Obviously, Moya Panda, the new executive director. I'm really looking forward to interacting with you all, and hopefully I'll have more information by the next meeting. But I just wanted to say hello, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for doing that. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I appreciate you doing that. And I think I speak for everyone when I say we're really, really excited to work with you. So thank you for coming on board. All right. Any other announcements? I see Kurt with a hand up.
Yeah, I just think it'd be appropriate to tell Ms. Sneed congratulations on completing her training.
Congratulations. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody. I think that will do it. So are there any objections to adjourning? I don't see any objections. So this regular meeting of the Anne Arundel County Administrative Charging Committee is adjourned at 6:40 p.m. Have a great evening.
Wow.